It's time for our Big Blend Radio Success Insider interview with military historian, U.S. Army veteran, and award-winning author Mike Guardia. We're happy to have him as Military Mike, our military history expert on BlendRadioandTV.com, also in Big Blend Radio and TV magazine and Parks and Travel magazine. In fact, he sent us on a mission. He sent us on a mission to follow in the general's footsteps of some of these amazing generals that he has written about, including, we've got over 10 books. I can't keep up with it. Yeah, there's a lot of books. He's written 2 children's books, plus Hal Moore, A Soldier Once and Always, American Guerrilla, The Forgotten Heroics of Russell W. Volkman, Shadow Commander, The Epic Story of Donald B. Blackburn, The Fires of Babylon, Eagle Troop and the Battle of 73 Easting, Hal Moore on Leadership, Winning When Outgunned and Outnumbered, Crusader, General Don Starry and the Army of His Times, and his latest one is Hal Moore, A Life in Pictures. So all of them are available on Amazon, and you can go right to his website, MikeGuardia.com. Mike, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, Lisa, it's great to be on your show. Thanks for having me again.
Hey, Nancy and I are all excited because today we get to do the Success Insider. We like the inside scoop, right, Nancy?
That's right.
Yep.
We want to know everything.
We want the scandal. But this is, it's amazing how many books you've written. When did you start, and say, okay, I'm going to start writing about these generals?
Well, I think for me, the idea started right around the time I was finishing up my undergrad degree. Here I was in my early 20s, and, I'd always been passionate about history, and I'd always been passionate about writing. And I knew I wanted to write a book at some point, but I wasn't quite sure where to start, and I wasn't quite sure what my first topic would be. But when I found the story of Russell Volkman, who was the subject of my first book, I was so inspired that I knew I had found a good starting point. And from that point forward, I just made up my mind that I was going to find out as much about him as I could and try and do his story justice, because I didn't think that it had quite gotten the attention that it deserved. And once I had gotten through with that book, I just felt so inspired to keep on finding more stories out there and to keep on writing. And for me, it was not only a thrill to get these stories out there, but in a very real matter of speaking, I also found the writing process to be pretty therapeutic.
It's therapeutic, but it's like
hard
it's like, I know with us, on deadlines and things, sometimes you've got these great ideas and it's like, you're walking around and you're writing in your head. I don't know if you do that, but I know Nancy and I do that. And then sometimes we bump into each other doing that. And then the process can be pretty brutal sometimes, I think, just to get the right words. You have this vision, but it just can, I find it brutal sometimes as much as I love it. Do you find it brutal?
It can be. Yeah. I mean, a lot of times it turns into a labor of love, and most of the time it's more labor than love, but for as brutal as it can be, it can also be incredibly rewarding, and the rewards far outweigh some of the hiccups that you have throughout the writing process, I've noticed.
I agree. I mean,
I think so.
That's for sure. And
it feels good when you get the right words all in the right order.
Yeah. What do you do when you do you ever get that, okay, I need to go take a break? Do you have any ways to keep everything flowing for you when you get to that point of, okay, we're laboring here? How do you keep yourself going?
Absolutely. I try and budget enough time for me to take some mental breaks, and I call these points of cognitive recalibration. And it's just where I'll walk away from the computer for, I don't know, anywhere from maybe 10 to 15 minutes at a time, maybe just pace around the house, maybe turn on the news, maybe listen to, some mindless pop music for a little bit, and then I take a deep breath, and then I get back to working, and just find a good place that I can determine as a stopping point.
See, we sort of go outside too. We have a patio where we've got some bird feeders, and we go and watch the birds.
We talk to the birds.
We talk to them.
Yeah.
We ask them what they think.
Yeah, we say, this is what we're doing. What do you guys think? And they have opinions. They
do. So they answer you.
Yes. It's amazing how close we are to them now. Because they're only about 3 feet away from us. and they don't seem to. It's like we're furniture now.
Yeah, we are.
It's cool.
And feeders. We are feeders. It's interesting too. When you think about the generals that you write about, and I've learned a lot reading your books, and it is just always amazing to me about the magnitude of these gentlemen who could really understand how the war was happening. And it's kind of interesting when you look at battles, like, okay, so-and-so is coming from this side, we're going to do this. But they were all very innovative on how, on tanks and helicopters and, all these different ways of fighting a battle. They were very innovative, ahead of their time. And to be able to execute is always sometimes a difficult thing when it's something new, but to be able to see it all, having you have served, when you look at what they've done, I mean, it's, to me, that's going to be part of that labor of like, okay, I got to get this right. I've got to, do the right thing for them, get their story out there. But when you look at what they've done, does it make you look at how we fight today in battles? Has it changed? Would you like to see them here now to kind of talk to people as well? I know you teach Hal Moore's lessons of leadership. Would you like to see them here today doing that again?
I would, and I think they'd have a lot of valuable insights. They really are products of their time. A time when they were at the forefront of the bad decisions that people many echelons above them had made. And they really carried those lessons forward. They actually were straddling two very poignant parts of history. They were the generation that grew up right when World War II was happening. And World War II, if you look at it in its entirety, really demonstrates how wars ought to be fought, and how you had a war that was going on that was free of a lot of political mismanagement. And then they also had their foot in the Vietnam era, where it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that the war was horribly mismanaged from the higher echelons and that the objectives weren't clear. So having those two poignant events as part of their formative years really helped solidify a lot of the ideas that they had and carried with them to how we fix the post-Vietnam Army and how we make it into that incredible fighting force that just plowed their way through Desert Storm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty
I think
amazing.
a lot of the insights that they gained throughout that 35 to 40 year period where they were the paid professionals making these decisions, they would pay enormous dividends today if they were still in a position to influence that power.
And do you think with your writing that not only are people reading it because they're into military history and into history, but also those who are serving and in leadership positions reading it to learn more about how he was a leader, and then also some of the innovative things he did. And when you think about General Don Starry too, and his innovations and how he, not just led as a leader, but also his career was just amazing. He was just the most committed to, he was like an outstanding man. Do you think leaders are reading to gain insight to be able to move forward and do to improve as well what they're doing?
I would hope so. I would hope so. A lot of the outlets where the Hal Moore leadership has been reviewed have been these professional military publications, ones that I know are circulated at places like West Point, places like the Command and General Staff College, even the Army War College and the Pentagon. So given the proximity that these reviews have to a lot of the higher echelon officers, I would hope, and at least I would imagine, that a lot of the big heavyweight decision makers are reading and learning from these experiences.
And I think in general too. In reading, it's just good for people to have those lessons. There's some good, solid lessons that I don't think will ever go out of style, but it's good to remember just as individuals on how we carry ourselves in life, and how we work together as human beings, and conquer things.
It's good to be inspired by people that you admire and feel they've done the right thing at the right time in the right way.
Mhm.
Because life can get a little bit tricky,
Mhm.
as we all know, and it's always helpful to have someone or something to look up
Mhm.
to kind of steady yourself and say, okay, it's not all bad, it's not all good. This is how you have to navigate.
Mhm.
So, and it really helps if you have an interest in history and you read what people have done in the past, especially those who were successful. It helps you in your own life, I think.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Is that so? When how more the lessons of leadership. So you do this as a speaking seminar workshop. Who do you go and speak to? Is it schools? Is it other military groups, corporations?
It pretty much runs the gamut from schools to civic organizations to military units to businesses of pretty much any size. Any professional organization, any educational place, pretty much anyone or any collective body of people that can stand to benefit from those leadership lessons. I've given the lecture to bodies as diverse as military units, all the way up to and including the National Council for Leadership.
Mm.
So it can pretty much be anyone and anywhere who stands something to gain from it, and someone who wants to try to introduce some principles of organizational leadership that'll really help them out in the long run.
Agreed. Also, I wanted to ask, because I know you served in the Army and you still serve today, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and also did some teaching. And but I was going to ask, did anybody in your family serve in the military?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we have a pretty long tradition of it going back, I would say at the very least 4 generations.
Wow.
At the very least 4 generations. I have a great-grandfather who served in World War I. I have a grandfather who served in World War II. I have a great-uncle who was in Korea. And my father also served in the Army.
Wow. Do you ever dig into their history?
Oh, I do. I found a lot of interesting anecdotes, a lot of interesting stories. All of it comes in bits and pieces because they're very humble people. They don't like to share a lot.
That's something I want to ask, because I know that you also work with the families of some of the generals that you've written about. How was that process? And you actually got to meet Hal Moore, right? So there's this.
I did.
It's so difficult to sometimes connect, and I think, I know that even doing interviews with musicians, it helps because Nancy and I both are musicians. And so it's an easier dialogue, an easier process. A musician wants to talk to a musician mostly, not just a radio person. Like, you need to know what I'm talking about.
Right.
So does it help, because we've met a lot of veterans from Vietnam, from World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's just, there's always going to be a chunk of not understanding everything, and that's why I really appreciate you coming on our shows, and because I'm learning so much, but do you feel it helps that you have served and that your family has been, in the military, that you can connect and get the information you need in a more understanding way?
I do, and I also think it really helps establish rapport. And the specific example that I can cite for this is when I was working on the book Shadow Commander, because I had first contacted Don Blackburn's family when I was working on American Guerrilla as part of my master's thesis. And I had originally sought out Blackburn really just for the sake of finding more context for the operant that Volkman had that both Volkman and Blackburn had operated in, because the two of them were in the Philippines together side by side throughout the guerrilla war. And at first, the family was a little bit reluctant to actually grant me access to Don Blackburn, because at this point he was 92 years old, and his memory was starting to fail him. He wasn't really in the best of health. and they had actually turned away other prospective biographers, surprisingly, one of which included Newt Gingrich.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think what finally brought down their defenses was when I introduced myself not as a professional writer or someone who was really looking to make profit. I said, really, I'm just a 23-year-old kid. I'm a graduate student. I'm an ROTC cadet at the University of Houston. My only goal really is to do justice to the story. I really want this to be part of not only Volkmann's legacy, but also your father's legacy. And I think that was the tipping point when they said, okay, he's not some, big Hollywood writer who's out for profit, who's out just to add another title to a growing list of books. This is somebody who actually cares and someone who can actually relate to what our family patriarch has been through. And it was in March of 2008 that I had that conversation with the Blackburn family. And just a few weeks beyond that, when I was able to meet Blackburn himself. And the timing, I think, could not have been better because almost 2 months to the day after I met him and after I completed my interviews was when Blackburn passed away.
Wow. That's wild, huh?
Mm.
Wow, you're supposed to do it, Do you find that sometimes, like, you're supposed to do it, you just like know in your heart and your bones, your soul, that you're supposed to be out there telling that story?
Right, I do. And it was that same nagging voice that really pushed me on to keep on doing the Hal Moore book, because I think I mentioned this in one of our previous interviews, but the first time that I approached him about it, he actually told me no. When I first approached Hal Moore about the prospect of doing a biography on him, let's wind the clocks back to 2009. This was right around the time I had finished American Guerrilla, and at first I sent him a letter, and then 2 weeks after the letter, I called him at his home, and he acknowledged that he got my letter, and he thanked me for my kind words, and he said that he didn't take visitors anymore, and that he really just preferred his solitude at this point in his life. But he said, "Well, send me your address, and I'll see if I can send you some stuff." Well, I can read between the lines. That was his nice way of saying, "Hey, kid, get lost. I'm not interested." So I didn't pursue the project anymore after that. I just put it out of my mind. I went about my business. And then a year and a half later, I was stationed at Fort Knox. I was an officer by this point. And there was this nagging voice in the back of my head that told me I really, really had to try again. And my first book, American Guerrilla, had already come out. So I just sent him another letter, and I included a copy of the book. And I said, I'm not sure if you remember me, but about a year and a half ago, I was the young man who approached you wanting to do the biography. And I would just like to re-engage you on it. Please accept this free copy of American Guerrilla as my gift to you. And, if we could set up an interview, sir, I will accommodate anything and everything that I'm willing to. That I'm both willing and able to. And I sent off that letter, and about, maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks later, I called him as a follow-up, and he confirmed that he got my letter. And then the very next words he said were, "So, Mike, when are you coming over?"
Oh, that's awesome.
And I didn't ask what changed his mind. I didn't ask any questions. I just said, "Sir, whenever you are available, I will be available too." And so whatever it was that happened between that year and a half time span, he said that he was willing to meet me, and also said that he was also said that he was happy to help me. And it was shortly after that I contacted his eldest son, who was still on active duty at the time. And I said, "Sir, my name is Lieutenant Guardia. I have recently contacted your father about doing an interview because I would really like to write his biography. At this point, I'm currently stationed at Fort Bliss, Texas. Is there any chance we could arrange a meeting, perhaps between the two of us?" And he emails me back that evening and says, "Mike, I'm at Fort Bliss right now on temporary duty. Why don't we meet for dinner tonight and talk about this?"
It's wild,
So
man.
it is wild how the stars all aligned. And yeah, and again, it was that nagging voice in the back of my head that said, try one more time, try one more time. And it was with a little bit of trepidation that I called him the second time because you have to keep in mind, this is a lieutenant calling a retired 3-star general. And I half expected to get the butt chewing of my life, but I was very, very pleasantly surprised when he said yes, and it was just an immeasurable honor to be able to actually build that rapport with him and get his life story down on paper, and that's going to be a point of happiness for me until the day I expire.
And you've got 3 books now under your belt for Helmore,
And I was thinking the fact that you were able to give him a book to show that you really actually completed tasks when you set out to do it makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's the first one is the biggest hurdle. The first one is always the hardest, and then from there you're able to keep moving forward. You have a little bit of fuel in there. Some examples.
When we first started our first magazine, it was very difficult because people were like, well, I'll wait and see if you actually manage it, and then I'll let you know. And we're like, well, how are we going to manage it if everybody's waiting for us to manage it, but we managed it?
I know. Even when people told us not to do a magazine. Why would you want to do a magazine? There's so many out there, and to do it on independently, we're in such an interesting world. I know the magazine world, going from printing and internet, now doing digital, it's changed a lot. I know the publishing world has changed. How has it changed for you when you wrote your first book to what it's like now?
Well, I think digital publishing has really changed the publishing industry as a whole, and I actually think that it's changed for the better. When ebooks first came out, let's see, I remember there was a Sony app for it at first back in the early 2000s, and then I think Kindle made its debut sometime around 2009 or 2010. And at first, I thought it was going to be one of these passing fads, and that it would, end up in the dustbin of history, like 8-track tapes did. But I was shocked to see how quickly it took off, and really how much staying power that it has. And I think that digital publishing and a lot of the direct to consumer commerce avenues that we all have, like Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, and just how easy it is to get what you want by ordering it online, has really made it easier not only for the consumer, but has also made it a lot easier for the author. And this really highlights the difference between traditional publishing and a lot of the self-publishing venues that are available now. I can remember, as early as 10 or 15 years ago, that if you self-published anything, self-publishing was a tacit admission of failure. That it was generally understood that if you had to self-publish anything, that's because every single reputable person out there wouldn't even take a second look at your manuscript, and that it must not even be worth the paper that it's printed on. And I think there was a little bit of validity to that point of view maybe 10 or 15 years ago. If you take away the pride and the ego factor of self-publishing, you see these remarkable authors who are putting out remarkable products, who are going directly to the consumer. And more than that, they're not only products of high quality, but the readers are buying them. The authors are making more money per copy sold, and they are establishing very, very good reputations for themselves as self-published authors. And then it begs the question, okay, why do literary agents and traditional brick and mortar publishing houses have to be the final arbiter of what stories actually make it to the market? Because really what it boils down to at the end of the day, it's all about the personal and the artistic preferences of whatever agent or whatever publishing house you are soliciting your work to at any given moment. And I'm not trying to knock traditional publishers or agents at all, because I have published with traditional publishing houses, and I've had very good experiences with them. But I think as a broader story arc here is that they don't have to be the final arbiters of what stories actually get to the market, because you have people with enormous talent who have good stories to sell, and they should be able to have a venue available to them to get those stories out into the market without having to be hamstrung by, whatever publishing house here who didn't think that the manuscript was strong enough, or this publishing house over there who had a different opinion than the other guy, or whatever literary agents with, 10 different opinions about what would make a particular story marketable.
Or it's who you know, right?
Right.
It's that whole thing about who you know versus what you know. I mean, the music industry is like that. There's so many, pretty much every band that comes on our show, and we interview a lot of musicians, they're independent, or they're in an independent collective. There's, certain independent, labels. And I think it's fascinating because, we deal with all levels of, publishers, Penguin, all of that. And to me, I've seen really bad books come out of really big publishing houses, complete with mistakes. And there's always going to be a mistake. You'll never find a magazine of ours without a mistake somewhere. It's just not going to happen. There's never going to be something without a mistake. We're human, everyone is human, so it's going to be there somewhere. But I think at the beginning of self-publishing, there were people that really shouldn't, or they really need to work on their craft and get someone to help with editing. Your books, you are really a good writer. You're solid. It's like, wow. Okay. How do you? Well, you write about something that is actually a very difficult topic for me to go, okay, I'm going to get into how, this battle and this kind of thing happened. I have to open my mind, and you've helped me along with that. And you can't do that if you're not a good writer, engaging, and you're telling the human story as well. And I think that helps. So people that people get stuck in things, only listen to blues music. I only read, bodice rippers. I only read this kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I think it's really important when a really good writer does get to tell a story and can, get people into understanding something they may never have thought was interesting. And mainstream publishing, whether it's music, books, TV, film, all of that, it's changed. Netflix is opening up to independents now too. So this independent voice is the era of now, which is I'm so thankful for, because it's opened doors to more competitiveness, better craft. The independents now, everybody in the independent creative zone now has to be at the top of their game. We're not doing vanity. It's not vanity publishing like it used to be. This is real stuff, and it's like you do have to have a reputation. You have to have the reviews. You have to, do radio shows all the time. That everybody knows. So there's so much. Half of it is really doing all that business side that people don't see. But I think it's really improved. Writers have improved. Musicians have improved through being able to tell their voice and having to compete in the marketplace.
Right.
Exciting. It's exciting times. So what's happening for you for the balance of 2019? Do you have new projects on the horizon?
I do, as a matter of fact. They are projects that are already complete. We are just trying to tack down a release date for these projects. And you can expect to see at least 2 titles that are going to be on the horizon for 2019.
Cool. Very, very cool. Awesome. Very excited about that. Who helps you in regards to the editing side and typos and things like that, and getting it, because it's technical. You're writing technical stuff and the human story together. How do you manage that? To me, that's actually one of the most important questions, because that's part of that success that people sometimes lack,
Right. Well, this might sound a little odd, might sound a little strange or offbeat, and, I probably am a little offbeat anyway, But what I do is I use a text-to-audio program. That's the first thing that I do. Whenever I've completed a manuscript, well, the first thing I do is I actually write out each one of my manuscripts longhand. I'll take a spiral notebook, like one of those 5-star, 5-subject notebooks, and I will write out the entire manuscript longhand. And I'll use different colored pens for different colored sections of the book. It helps me organize my thoughts better and, find sections that I could probably want to cut and paste into other parts of the book. So I write it out longhand first, and then I transfer it over to a Word document. I actually type it out. And that's where I'll catch the first round of my mistakes, or, I'll type something out and I'll be like, okay, what was I thinking when I wrote this down? This doesn't really make any sense. Let me try and fix it. And then after that, I have a text-to-audio program that I use where I cut and paste the entire manuscript. I put it inside this text-to-audio, and I have the audio narrator read the book back to me in a variety of different accents. So, yeah. So, so the text-to-audio program has an option to where you can have a British female voice read you the book.
Oh, that's
and then you have an American male also read you the book. There are like slightly different variances on each of the accents. So I try those two different accents to read back the book to me to see if it still sounds as compelling with both voices narrating it. And, if I can get the same effect through both voices reading it, especially being that most of my readers are here and in the UK, then I say, okay, this is a solid story and I'm ready to put it out to market.
Wow, that's amazing.
Huh.
Well, I know that proofreading, if you proofread, you have to read it out loud, that's one of the best ways to proofread. But Nancy and I, we both do this. When we proofread and read out loud, we both do British accents when we do it. Mm-hmm. Yep, because it slows you down and makes you think about I don't know, just maybe because, I did have a British accent when we lived there, but there is something that, I don't know, it's more fun anyway. I like British accents.
Well, there's pause for thinking.
Mm-hmm.
More than sometimes when you look at the American versus British,
mm-hmm.
they do speak slower. The British people have longer pauses, and Americans tend to go really fast.
You just don't want it in a Geordie accent.
And so, most Americans speak really fast compared to other parts of the world.
Yeah.
So, so it's kind of, if you're trying to think through what you're writing, a British accent works.
Well, I have to say, Mike, this is the first time I've ever had that answer.
I know, it's interesting. We're like,
that's
wow.
that is different, and it's cool. I love that. Now, you've answered 10 questions, Success Insider questions, and everyone, you'll be able to see it up on blendradioandtv.com and also on Big Blend Radio and TV magazine, the February through April issue. And one of the questions we asked is, if you could switch careers for a day just to learn something new, what would you choose? So tell us about this, because do you know how to fly?
I do not, and I wish I did. But in response to that question, the career that I chose would be an astronaut, simply because, what could be cooler than actually going to outer space, or, being on the moon, or, flying the space shuttle? It's something that it's something that's a novelty, and something that, at the end of the day is just really cool. For lack of a better term, it's like, to be able to go into outer space and, do a spacewalk while you're tethered to the International Space Station. Who else could do something like that?
I know, you can be Michael Jackson up there, do like a moonwalk. Yeah. That would be super cool. Well, would you want Richard Branson to fly you up there, or would you want Elon Musk to take you up?
Well, see, all things considered, I think I'd rather go with John Glenn if he were still living.
No, there you go.
I was going to say, why does it have to be those two?
Come on, well, because they're all into it, But you could go to Mars too. But I agree. It's like the new frontier, and it's, I think the best stories are these, all the Captain John Smith and Sir Francis Drake and Vasco da Gama and all these guys that went across on the seas not knowing really what was going to happen.
Yeah,
and finding out that the world is indeed round, people. I'm sorry, but it is round. I don't know why we still have people believing the world is flat, but the world is round. I've been around it. It's round. Okay, so Mike, very cool. Very excited for everyone to read your Q&A, and always good to chat with you on the radio. But one thing, just for anyone getting into the world of writing military history, even, you were on the show with us with Sue Ingalls about her book, Sue Ingalls Finan, about the Battle of New Orleans. That was such a good conversation, and you're a great co-host, by the way. You've got to add that to your resume. You're a good radio co-host.
Thank you.
But she was, she wrote these battle scenes, which were amazing to me. And so, some authors may be a historian, writing a historical, novel, but then suddenly they have to include a battle scene that they don't know. So they're going to have to dip into the world of military history at that point and get it right. I think you have to include military history just about in any historical novel. There's something going on.
Oh, there's always something.
But one tip for anybody getting started in that.
Yeah, well, the one tip that I would give to anyone really, and I know it sounds kind of cliched, but I can break it up into three parts. One is just to try to keep a positive outlook. Try to keep a positive outlook and never give up on your dreams, because it's a tremendous growing process. Success as a writer isn't something that's going to happen with just one book, more than likely. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It has to be a long-term, long-key strategy. And along the way, you're going to have your naysayers. You're going to have people who give you critiques that are nice and constructive. And you're also going to get critiques which you think are unwarranted and sometimes just downright nasty. But the hardest thing is just learning how to shake that off and really to just stay focused on what it is that you want and what it is you want to accomplish, and just knowing that it's going to be that long-term process.
Go with the flow.
I think you just have to sift through things and pull out what's helpful and ignore all the rest.
Yeah, you can't beat your head against the wall, especially on people's opinions. You got to move forward and stay positive. Yeah. I mean, if you didn't listen to that voice, you wouldn't have 3 books on Hal Moore. It's amazing. Amazing. Good stuff, Mike. Everyone, again, you can keep up with Mike. Go to his website, MikeGuardia.com. Of course, he's on Amazon, all those great places online. You can get his books there. And also keep up with him on blendradioandtv.com and nationalparktraveling.com. He'll be on there because we're going to be calling you from different places around the country on our Love Your Parks tour going, hey, we're standing where Hal Moore was, where he stood. We're following in the general's footsteps, and we look forward to coming and seeing you in Minnesota, except for we're going to wait until summertime. Is that okay? Because
Absolutely.
we're not
That's
good
preferable.
at snow. Yeah, I think you guys have kayaking and lakes and things out there. It looks good. It looks really pretty.
We sure do.
So again, everyone, MikeGuardia.com, and also the latest books as well as Hal Moore, A Life in Pictures, and Crusader, General Don Starry and the Army of His Times. Thanks so much, Mike.
All righty, Lisa and Nancy, thank you so much again for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you all for joining us here on Big Blend Radio today. It has been such a blast. We will be back on Friday for our first Friday art show. We have some amazing musicians joining us. We have Tanya Ortega from the National Parks Arts Foundation, along with their current resident in the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. I know there's a shutdown, but he's still there. So he'll be joining us. Composer Glenn McClure, and he's got such an amazing, amazing story. And we also have the New York City acoustic duo Yagul joining us. So again, that is the first Friday, January 6th. I know my dates. January 4th. That's what January 6th is our Champagne Sundays anniversary show, so don't miss that either. But January 4th, we will be back for Friday's First Friday Art Show, 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you all for joining us. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. And to close the show, we're going to play Wings of Fire because we think about some of the generals that Mike Guardia has written about, and they brought in the world of helicopters being part of battle tactics. So here it is, Wings of Fire from Misha Shellhaus, guitarist and producer and composer. You can keep up with him at mishamusic.com. This is the title track to his very first EP. Enjoy.